In this video, we talk about Deadfall, a game that is marketed as a clever little bluffing game. Well, it is little, as you can see from the box. It is a bluffing game, I can tell you that already. But is it clever? Well, we will see that in the conclusions of this video. This is a card game that is abstract in nature, but comes with cards that are graced with very nice fantasy art. Nothing to complain about the art. Really, absolutely nice and pleasant. This is a deck of cards that is structured in the following way. There is a single card with a value of 1, 2 cards with a value of 2, 3 cards with value of 3, and so on and so forth. So as you can imagine, you have a lot of cards with value of 10. Basically, each card is present in the deck in as many copies as the value of the card itself. So that you know that some cards are more likely to be around and other ones much less. At the beginning of the game, you deal a hand of cards to each player. The number of cards depends on the number of players, and then the game is ready to start. Well, actually, before you do so, something important, you need to give each player a supply of tokens. Those tokens are currency. Those tokens are what money is in gambling games. Structurally, this is a gambling game, meaning that it's played in a hand of cards, in a string of hands. At the end of each hand, somebody will get some money, some tokens from somebody else. I personally don't like gambling games when money is involved, and people that play poker immediately reply, well, but we don't play with a lot of money. To which I reply, well, I never said I don't like gambling games with a lot of money. I don't like gambling games with money involved at all. It just warps experience, it distracts me, I don't like it. But here, the thing is handled with tokens. Still, the rule book, or I should say rule sheet, doesn't specify any clear victory conditions and game condition. So basically, you will have to agree with your friends on a certain number of tokens that you collect to be declared the winner of the game. You just play until you feel like playing. Maybe, everybody starts with 50 tokens, and then the player that wins is the first player to collect 80 tokens, 70 tokens. Of course, the higher the number, the longer the game. Or girls, you could even play with money if that is your thing. Nothing is there to prevent you if that's what you and your group like. I personally like tokens. I like to think of victory points. I like the purity of the game experience to remain untouched. Back to us. You have your hand of cards, and at the beginning of each hand, of each round, each player plays a card from their hand. The first card is played simply to determine who goes first. And for reasons that will be clear later, to play a low card at the beginning, if you have one, is a good idea. Basically because they're not very good otherwise, and this way you get rid of them in the initial play, which is not fully part of the game yet. It's just to determine who goes first. However, if there is a tie, you keep playing. If there is a tie, you keep playing in this initial phase of the turn until the tie is broken. At that point, you have determined who goes first. The dragon, there's only one copy of the dragon. It's the lowest value, so you know that you'll go first because, remember, in this phase, the player with the lowest value goes first. Once we determine who the first player is, players will alternate playing cards from their hand. And when you play a card, you simply put it on top of your previous play. So you form a little deck. This player plays that card, and now this other player plays this card, this other player plays this card, and so on and so forth. You form stacks in front of you. There is another thing that you can do instead of playing a card, which is to call another player. When you call another player, you are stating that the card that they just played, the one on top of their deck, is dead, which means no one else has them in their hand. Not the player that just played it, not any of the other players. So if I saw an opponent playing a goblin and I do have a goblin in my hand, well, it's likely I'm not gonna call them because I know that somebody, that be me, has that card. So you need to try to figure out what the opponents are trying to do, and the opponents are trying to not to get cold, because they're trying to sneak in cards that that they know are dead, or they suspect are dead. They're trying to sneak them in and not to get cold. So that is the bluffing element. You're trying to figure out when the opponents are trying to slip in a dead card, or one that is assumed to be dead, and you have to do that yourself at some point. You will have to do it without getting caught. When a player is called, if the call is correct, the accusation is correct, then the caller collects a number of tokens from the liar, the called player, equal to the value of the card that was just called. If the call was incorrect, then you pay to the player that you just unfairly accused, and you have to give them a number of tokens equal to the value of the card that was just called. Now, the game comes with several variants that are suggested in the rule sheet, and there's one that I like very much for reasons that I will explain in a second. As you can imagine, since you lose tokens if you're caught playing cards that no one has, if you keep a copy of a card that you have in your hand, then you're safe. So players will tend towards the end to keep sets of cards in their hand. Having a pair of the same type of card as your last card is very good, is very strong, because I play that one, call it if you want, then I have no problem. What I like in a variant that is recommended in the rulebook is that there is another way of calling the players, so another way of stealing tokens from them, which is you can collect tokens from a player if you can guess the entire content of their hand. Now, that sounds like pretty difficult. If a player has 4 cards, then unless you're a mentalist or you're cheating, or both, it's very hard to guess all that they have. The idea is that, however, if a player has a single card in their hand, and you suspect that they did keep a pair, then you try to guess the content of the hand, and oh, look at that, I guessed right. So this basically something, it's a variant that gives a different victory condition, a different scoring condition that allows you to win or to score by guessing the content of their hand, which is something, it's a different way of saying the last 2 cards or the last card in their hand. I like that very much because I do not like games where there's a strategy that is always strong, always works, and without the variant, the pair strategy always works. I like it much better this way that, well, maybe I am keeping a pair, but in this case, I'm trying not to get caught doing that. So everything has a designated killer. Every move is potentially dangerous for you or for somebody else. So in any case, in every move, you're trying to figure out what the opponents are doing and deceive them. So this is how the game works, really. It's very simple, very basic, but is it clever? Well, yes, I think it is. I like the fact that there are strategies that emerge over time, ways of playing the game that, again, will increase your chances of victory, but nothing is foolproof, nothing is bulletproof and always works. Usually you will want to play cards with a low value at the beginning, because remember, that is when things because these cards are very hard to play later. If I'm playing it, then chances are then there aren't other knights around, so you pretty much get rid of them early on when you're trying to decide who goes first. And there's that interesting strategy there, but of course then if somebody plays a card that is lower than yours, then you still just played a low card and somebody may call you and you lose the round immediately. In other cases, maybe you want to be safe and then you do have a card that you don't feel comfortable playing, then you simply keep it in your hand for as long as possible, hoping that the hand ends earlier before you're forced to play the card. Again, bigger cards are better for later, but there's no single strategy that always works. It really is about studying your opponent, seeing what they're doing and not doing, seeing why didn't they call me when I played that crazy card? I really thought that they would, so I guess maybe they have such card in their hand. So there are ways of doing that, which is what bluffing games are all about reading the opponents and trying not to get interpret it correctly yourself. You're refusing or trying to prevent the opponents from seeing what you're doing. It's a little small, clever game. Is very quick. You can play actually. You can play for a long time if you decide to set the victory conditions to a very high number of tokens that a player needs to collect to win the game. But there is a flexibility there. You can simply play for a while, set a victory condition, then turns out a player needs to go and you say, you know what, let's play 3 more hands and we see who the winner is. At that point, the winner will be the player with the highest total. The art is nice, the game is simple and clever. It takes less to explain than it took me in this video. I tried to add a little more details and considerations here, but if you're teaching the game to a new player, it's really extremely simple and easy to play. Anybody can play, and it's fun. There's a certain fresh quality to it. I like bluffing games. I like the simplicity of this game. This is one that definitely keeps a promise of being a clever little bluffing game. Yes, it's bluffing, yes, it's little, and yes, it's very clever, especially with that variant that I suggested. There are also other variants that you can experiment with, but that one to me is the one that that is virtually necessary, that really makes the game good and fun. As a simple light filler, unless you decide to play it extensively for a whole night, which I guess is possible too, since the conditions are so flexible, but per se, it has the nature of a simple light filler that is enjoyable to play, that has some thinking involved, and also that has nice art to look at while you're playing the game, which of course doesn't hurt.